First love broke my heart, now it's the same love that tried to steal my career, but he didn't know that this time I had come not to break down but to turn around. When I walked into the towering glass building of Novatech Corp., I felt nervous, excited, and proud, all at once. This was my first day at one of the most prestigious tech companies in the country. I had worked hard to earn this opportunity, and I was ready to prove myself. I straightened my blazer, took a deep breath, and stepped into the elevator. My heart pounded like it knew something I didn't. And maybe, it did. As I entered the main office floor, I was greeted by a cheerful receptionist who handed me my ID card and directed me to the conference room for the orientation. I was walking confidently, until I saw the nameplate on the glass door. Richard Dawson, Project Head. The name hit me like a punch to the chest. Richard. My ex. My hands froze on the door handle. The same Richard who broke my heart 2 years ago. The one who vanished without explanation after promising a future together. And now, he was my boss. I pushed the door open, hiding my shock behind a fake smile. He looked up from his laptop, and for a brief second, his eyes widened. But then he smiled, the same charming smile that once fooled me. Well, well. Emily Brooks. Small world, he said smoothly, standing up and offering a handshake. I shook his hand coldly. I guess it is. I could feel the heat of 100 unspoken memories burning between us, but I buried them deep. The next few days were awkward, to say the least. Richard kept things professional, but I caught glimpses of tension in his eyes whenever I presented an idea or outperformed others in team discussions. And I did, consistently. I worked hard, stayed late, volunteered for challenges. I wasn't there for him, I was there for my growth, my dreams. Soon, people started noticing. Even upper management. They liked my ideas. Some even called me a rising star. But Richard, he didn't like that. Not one bit. He never showed it openly. But I saw it, in the way he clenched his jaw during meetings, in how he interrupted me mid-sentence, in how he conveniently forgot to forward my emails to the higher-ups. Still, I kept going. I also got close to Ethan, a senior developer with a kind smile and a quiet strength. We connected over tech talks, coffee breaks, and late-night debugging. He made the workplace feel lighter, warmer. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could finally move on from my past. But what I didn't know then, was that my past hadn't moved on from me. And it was about to strike back, in a way I never imagined. The weeks flew by, and with each passing day, I got more involved in a secret project that had the potential to revolutionize the company's AI platform. I called it Neuralink, an advanced adaptive algorithm that could learn in real time and self-optimize based on user behavior. It was bold, complex, powerful. And it was mine. Richard had assigned me to the project as an experiment, thinking I'd probably fumble and fail. But when I showed him the beta results, his reaction changed. He tried to hide it, but I could see the hunger in his eyes. Suddenly, he started taking an unusual interest in my work. Emily, you've done something special here, he said one day, pretending to sound impressed. But don't overwork yourself. Why don't you let me handle the demo to the investors next week? You deserve a break. A tiny alarm bell rang in my head. Are you sure? I asked. I've been preparing for this for weeks. He smiled that same old smile. Of course. You've earned the spotlight, but let me do the talking. We don't want anything to go wrong, do we? Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. Still, I nodded. Okay. That evening, I stayed late. Everyone else had left, but I wasn't done. I sat alone in the dark office, staring at the lines of code that had become my life. And that's when it hit me. Richard didn't just want to present my work, he wanted to own it. I opened the back-end logs and started digging. What I found chilled me. He had copied my entire source code into a private folder. A folder only he had access to. He was planning to present it as his own. The demo wasn't just a presentation. It was a theft in progress. I sat there, staring at the screen. My fingers trembling. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I smiled. Because I had built a failsafe. A hidden line of code, deep, encrypted, invisible to most. If someone without my biometric key tried to run the full version of Neuralink, it would crash. Silently. Instantly. And I had set a timer, exactly 10 minutes after unauthorized activation. That night, I encrypted the final build. Then I backed up my logs. All of them. And waited. The next morning, Richard acted like nothing had happened. Walked past me, coffee in hand, whistling. A day later, he flew to New York to pitch the software to a room full of high-profile investors. That same afternoon, he returned. He walked into my office. Smiling. Too widely. And then he said the words that will stay with me forever. "Congratulations, Emily. You're being let go." I stared at Richard, not blinking. "Congratulations, Emily. You're being let go," he repeated with that smug, self-satisfied grin stretched across his face. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask why. I simply gave him a slow, cold smile. "Thank you," I said, rising from my seat. "And, best of luck with tomorrow's investor demo." He hesitated for just a second, clearly surprised by my calmness. But he didn't ask anything. He nodded to the security guard standing by the door. The guard approached me like I was some kind of criminal. I didn't resist. I simply handed over my ID badge, unplugged my laptop, and walked out. But before I stepped outside the glass doors, I turned back just once. "Tell them to be ready," I said. "Something extraordinary is about to happen." Then I disappeared into the sunlight, with a small smile tugging at my lips. Because I knew what they didn't. Inside that shiny conference room, a group of wealthy investors had just seen the beginning of Richard's grand presentation. He'd pitched my AI project like it was his brainchild. He'd strutted around like a king. And then he hit the demo button. The interface launched perfectly. The data looked good. Everything flowed smoothly. But then, exactly 10 minutes in, the system began to slow. Then freeze. Then collapse, silently, completely, with no explanation. The investors stared in confusion. Richard tapped keys. Nothing happened. He restarted. Error screen. He tried again. Blackout. And then the room filled with whispers, questions. Doubt. Disbelief. In less than a minute, the demo that was supposed to be his rise became his downfall. I was long gone, watching the chaos unfold from a quiet cafe 2 blocks away, sipping black coffee and scrolling through the live event feed that someone had foolishly made public. I saw Richard's face when he realized the software wouldn't run. I saw the investors walking out. And I saw the company's stock begin to dip. But it wasn't over yet. That evening, I uploaded a detailed blog post titled "Theft in Plain Sight: How My Boss Tried to Steal My Work," backed with time-stamped code, screen recordings, internal emails, and system logs. Within hours, the post went viral. By morning, I was trending on every major tech forum. I didn't even have to say his name. People figured it out. And Richard? He vanished from the company website by noon. But I wasn't done. Because what he tried to steal. I still had the original. And I had plans. Big ones. The day after my blog post went viral, my inbox exploded. Tech journalists wanted interviews. Founders wanted to meet me. Venture capitalists, ones I'd only read about, were emailing me directly. But I didn't rush into anything. I needed silence first. Clarity. So I went back to my small apartment, closed the curtains, and stared at my whiteboard. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted purpose. And I had it, Neuralink. The code that Richard tried to steal, the one that broke his big demo, was still safe with me. Untouched. Protected. Complete. For the next 2 weeks, I worked non-stop. Day and night. Barely eating. Barely sleeping. I rebuilt the front end, cleaned the bugs, and added a new layer of real-time security. This time, it was smarter. Invisible. And mine alone. Then, with a deep breath, I renamed the project. Aegis AI, my shield, my vengeance, my future. 3 weeks later, I pitched it to an angel investor who had reached out after reading my story. She was sharp, direct, and had built 2 unicorns herself. After the demo, she looked me in the eyes and said, "How much do you need?" I gave her the number. She wired it the same day. Just like that, I became the CEO of my own startup. But Richard's shadow still lingered. One evening, I received a text from a number I hadn't seen in years. "Richard, you got what you wanted. Happy now?" I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have ignored it. Blocked him. Cursed him. Instead, I replied with just one sentence. "You tried to bury me, but I was a seed." Then I deleted his number for good. By month's end, Aegis AI had its first team of 5 developers, designers, and 1 lawyer who made sure no one could ever try to steal from me again. And then something unexpected happened. I received an email from someone I never thought I'd hear from again. Jason. The guy from my old office, the one I had started getting close to before things turned dark. He had quit after I was fired. Walked out on principle. Now he wanted to join my team. I didn't reply immediately. Not because I didn't trust him, but because for the first time in my life, I was no longer looking for someone to rescue me. I had rescued myself. Still, the idea of having someone on my side, who once believed in me, felt right. I smiled and replied, "Let's talk." Because this wasn't just my comeback. It was the beginning of something far bigger. 6 months had passed. The little seed I once protected had now grown into a roaring storm. Aegis AI was not just a startup anymore, it was a movement. Built on truth. On scars. On the refusal to be stolen from, silenced, or sidelined again. We had just signed our biggest contract yet, a multi-million-dollar partnership with a healthcare tech giant. And this time, my name was on every document. As I walked into our new office, not rented, but owned, my team clapped. They knew what this moment meant. They had seen the headlines, the struggle, the fall, and the rise. But what they didn't know was what I had kept buried all along. A small flash drive. Encrypted. Hidden. Untouched, until now. It contained the original version of the software Richard had tried to steal. Not to use. Not to leak. But to remind me of where I began. I plugged it into my private system and opened the terminal window. Lines of old code blinked back at me. Messy, emotional, desperate lines I had written at 2 a.m. in heartbreak, in frustration, in belief. And suddenly, it all came rushing back. The office politics. Richard's fake smiles. That gut-wrenching moment when he said, "Congratulations, Emily. You're being let go." I exhaled. Not in anger, but in peace. Because I was no longer the girl who needed to prove anything. I had already won. That night, we hosted our launch party. Journalists, partners, even a few old faces I didn't expect, they all came. And in that crowd, across the room, I saw him. Richard. Wearing a cheap suit. No press around him. No investor by his side. Just a quiet, fading man in a sea of noise. Our eyes met. He gave a slight nod. I returned it. Calmly. Without hate. Without pride. Because I had learned something in this journey. Success isn't revenge. It's freedom. As the night wore on, Jason came and stood beside me on the balcony. You did it, he said softly. No, I replied, looking out at the city lights. We did it. And this is just the beginning. He smiled, holding out a small cupcake with a candle on it. What's this for? I asked, surprised. It's been 1 year today, he said. Since you got fired. I figured we should celebrate the day the world almost lost Emily Stone. I laughed, for real this time. I closed my eyes, made a wish, and blew out the candle. But deep down, I already had everything I wished for.